If you've ever been nervous, worried, or on edge when you think about money, you are not alone. It's probably financial anxiety, and the reality is most of us experience financial anxiety. Stay tuned where I tell you all about what financial anxiety is, what it isn't, and offer you a few tips on how to deal. What's up? My name is Lindsay. I'm a financial therapist, and I wrote the literal book on financial anxiety. In this episode, I'm going to break down what anxiety is and what financial anxiety is. First things first, financial anxiety is not a diagnosis in the DSM, so you cannot go to your primary care provider or psychiatrist and ask for a diagnosis in financial anxiety. Rather, what it is a collection of experiences, of thoughts, of feelings, of behaviors that we might have when it comes to engaging with our money. But before we get into what financial anxiety is, let's back up and talk about general anxiety. Anxiety is an emotion. It's something that we feel, and it's normal for all humans to feel anxiety. Anxiety is a physiological response to an external stressor. Anxiety can look like a cluster of different things, of the way we think, of the way we feel, and of the way we behave. Even though anxiety is a normal emotion to experience, it becomes problematic when the stressor has lifted or ended and we're still feeling the residual impacts of anxiety. Think about it like this. Think back to the days when you were taking exams in school and you might feel some of those worried thoughts, feelings, or behaviors when you were sitting down to take the exam. Some of the thoughts running through your head might be, oh, I wonder if I studied enough. I hope this exam isn't too hard. Gosh, I'm worried that I won't know as much as I think I know. Some of those worried thoughts. Some of those worried feelings in your body could be like sweaty palms, racing heart, tightness in your chest and your back and your muscles, maybe stomach ache or queasiness or nausea, potentially headaches, clenching of things, feeling like it's a little bit hard to breathe, sometimes even feeling tingly in your head or your fingertips or your toes. And then some of the behaviors you might experience because of that is maybe rushing really quickly through the exam because you're feeling really nervous about it, or checking the clock a lot to make sure that you have enough time left to take the exam. That would be kind of a normal experience of anxiety that goes away after that exam is over. Meaning, as you sit through the exam and as you get through it, the heart rate should start to come down. Some of the sweatiness and tachiness should start to lessen. Those thoughts shouldn't be quite as frantic or quite as rushed. And once you turn in that exam and walk out of the exam room, you should start to feel a much better sensation in your body. Now, of course, it's normal to have like a couple of residual thoughts left over, like, oh, I wonder how I did on question number 5. But where anxiety becomes problematic is if that sensation of anxiety that you had during the exam continued to last far beyond the time of that stressor. So that night you can't sleep because you're ruminating about all your thoughts. Your body is so upset that you can't even eat dinner because you're so nauseous. You can't sit still to spend time with a friend because you're so frantic and worried, right? That kind of helps you to understand what is healthy anxiety and what's a healthy anxiety response is that it's short term and oriented around a particular stressor. And then over time, those symptoms kind of release. So that's anxiety, and it's normal to experience in little bursts. We all do, and it tips into needing to get a hand from a primary care provider, a therapist, a psychiatrist, counselor, etc. if it is getting in the way of your ability to function, meaning it's getting in the way of you being able to go to school, go to work, take care of yourself, take care of your kids or of people who rely on you. If it is making it hard for you to have your regular daily activities in a way that is normal for you. If it's persisting beyond a stressor, that might be a cue that it's time to talk to a primary care provider or therapist and figure out what is going on. Now that we've talked about anxiety, let's talk about money anxiety or financial anxiety. Again, this is not a diagnosis in the DSM, but what we want to think about is layering on what anxiety is with some of that money stuff. Financial anxiety then is having worried thoughts, feelings, or behaviors in relationship to your money. Most of us are going to experience financial anxiety at some point in our life when something stressful is coming at us. Hopefully, if we are experiencing it in the short-term way, it should dissipate after that stressor leaves. Meaning, you might have some worried thoughts about whether or not your paycheck actually got deposited and refresh your banking app a couple of times just to make sure the money went in. But once you see that that money went into your account, hopefully that anxiety comes down and you don't have to frantically keep keep refreshing it. Another example of financial anxiety might be the anxiety you experience when communicating to somebody else something money related. Think about going out to dinner with friends and the nervousness that you might experience when the bill comes and you haven't really decided how you're going to divvy up the check or who is taking what. That might cause some anxiety. All of us experience financial anxiety at certain points in time. And while it is true that as we have enough money, our financial anxiety may decrease, right? It's going to be far more stressful if you are living paycheck to paycheck, you are not earning enough to make ends meet, or you're in a financially precarious situation. That makes sense that your financial anxiety is going to be up. But if you're earning enough to make ends meet and you're not living paycheck to paycheck, you might see a slight decrease in the financial anxiety, but it is not true that the more money you have or the more money you earn, it will eliminate financial anxiety overall. That's a myth a lot of us get caught up in, especially if we're consuming a lot of content around financial literacy. This content, even though it's not direct, often will say things like, if you have enough, then you'll sleep better at night. But that's not always true, particularly if we came from somewhere where maybe our household finances were not consistent. We couldn't rely on them. They were inconsistent and frightening. It makes sense that even if we have a good income and a steady job, that we'd still be experiencing financial anxiety. Let's talk about how financially anxious thoughts, feelings, and behaviors might show up. The thoughts could be racing thoughts, like worried a lot about what's going to happen or what already happened with your money. It can be jumping to conclusions. Oh my gosh, I know my boss is so upset that I missed that deadline and I'm probably going to get fired, worrying about that. Other things could be this panic around whether or not you have enough saved or whether you talk to a friend about money in the right way. The physiological feelings of financial anxiety and traditional anxiety are identical because our body is going to respond to a stressor in the same way. The same sweatiness, tenseness, difficulty breathing, dizziness, all of that can happen with our financial anxiety. Now, the behaviors might be a little bit different. Generally, we don't like feeling anxious, so we're going to do whatever we can to avoid feeling financially anxious. For some of us, we're going to dive deep into learning as much as possible, thinking if we know more about money, we'll feel less anxious. That can be true to a point. Knowledge is power, but the application of the knowledge, which is what I talked about in my financial wellness video, really is what helps to move the needle. That frantic energy around learning more could be a way that financial anxiety manifests. Financial anxiety could also manifest as total avoidance of money or situations that involve money. That could be anything from not opening or paying your bills, not checking your credit score or looking at your credit report, avoidance of those financial tasks, or it could be avoiding anything that has to do with money with our friends, with our loved ones, because we feel uncomfortable talking about it. For example, if I'm in a tight financial situation and my friends keep inviting me out to bar crawls and to brunch, if I'm financially anxious when it comes to communicating with others where I'm at financially, instead of saying, hey, that's not in my budget, can we do something else? I might just ghost. And the problem with ghosting instead of communicating to friends and loved ones where you're at financially is that eventually if you keep ghosting them and keep saying no to invitations, they're probably going to stop inviting you to hang out. It is imperative that we learn how to deal with those uncomfortable situations so we can nurture our relationships in our life. Another way that financial anxiety can show up is procrastination, putting off those tasks that you have to do. This is kind of a cousin of avoidance. Avoidance might be like not looking at things, whereas procrastination is those little white lies that you tell yourself. I'll get to that tomorrow. That's not going to take that long. I do better when I'm under pressure. That type of financial procrastination could also be related to financial anxiety. A few quick tips on dealing with financial anxiety is first to figure out where and when you're experiencing your financial anxiety. A great little self-audit that you can do is thinking about all the times that you've interacted with money over the past week or over the past month and thinking about how was I feeling during that interaction. Literally every interaction you have with money. When you handed over your debit card, when you ordered takeout, were you feeling good? Were you feeling a little worried? Were you worried that maybe that debit card wasn't going to go through? Kind of thinking about that interaction. Maybe your financial anxiety is more when you're talking to others about money, talking to a partner, a parent, a boss, thinking about those things. And maybe your financial anxiety shows up more in relationships with money. Sometimes financial anxiety can show up in this knowledge area, feeling like you need to know more and consume more. First, figure out where your anxiety is showing up and then start to think about ways that you can dial it down. I think we have to get really comfortable with this idea that it's okay to experience somewhat uncomfortable emotions. Our society has made it a total no-no to experience anything besides like happiness and joy and fun. And I want you to know that having emotions like worry, anxiety, nervousness is a normal part of the human experience. Of course, we don't want those emotions to dominate our livelihood, but I also want you just to know that it means you're human if you experience some of those feelings that aren't in that like happy bucket. Once you have figured out kind of where your anxiety is showing up, we're thinking about how to dialing it down. If on a scale of 1 to 10, your financial anxiety is like an 8 out of 10, I want you to ask yourself, what can I do to take that 8 to maybe like a 5.5 or 6? Like, what are some things I can do just to turn down the intensity on it? And there are a lot of different things that you can do, but you know yourself best. You know how you typically cope with uncomfortable feelings and what types of things make it better and what types of things make it worse. For example, if you are struggling with communicating to your friends about where you're at financially, maybe you know that sitting down to everyone the next time you're at brunch and telling them that your budget is kind of tight is probably going to make you really anxious. A better idea might be to like text or call somebody in the group who you really trust and share with them a little bit about what's going on and lovingly giving them your permission to share with others in the group what's going on. This requires a level of vulnerability and trust, but what we know is that talking about money helps us to feel less alone. And so often when we say to our friends, hey, I can't afford to do this, or that's actually not in my budget right now, we're expecting like the worst case scenario. That's what the way anxiety works. It jumps to conclusions, it catastrophizes things. We think people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, you can't go to brunch, you're out of our friend group. When in reality, most people, if they genuinely care about you and love you, they're gonna say, oh my gosh, no big deal. We can totally do something else. Plus, I was getting sick of mimosas and waffles every other week. It'd be nice to kind of mix it up. And so to think about how they might respond to you in a kinder way. If you know that your anxiety is like an 8 out of 10, maybe talking to one of them at a time instead of everybody all at once can help dial down that anxiety. The other thing I want for you to think about is, what are the times when I'm engaging with money that it actually isn't that bad? Maybe I don't really mind checking my bank account, or maybe it doesn't totally stress me out to file taxes. I don't know who you are, but like, good for you if that's you. Thinking about the different types of financial interactions that you have that don't cause you anxiety and putting that in your brain bank as a way to say like, hey, even though my anxiety is telling me that everything makes me anxious about money, there's some proof that not every single financial interaction causes anxiety. Sometimes just having that very concrete list for your brain can help your brain to not be weighted so heavily in that everything is wrong, everything is scary, everything is doom and gloom, and much more balanced of these certain things stress me out, but these things over here aren't that bad. If you love this video, share below what kind of tip you're gonna take and try and implement to help dial down that financial anxiety. And also let me know if you loved this content and want more like this. I would love to make sure that I'm bringing you the type of content that you wanna see.